Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Fearless Conversations. My name is Dawn Tao. This is Jade Lotsu and Rochelle Ragusi. Feminism and toxic masculinity. So, back in the day, when I was growing up, I thought I was a feminist. Like, I thought of myself as a feminist. I obviously believe in equal rights for women and all of that. That was what I thought feminism meant growing up. So I just considered, that was what I was. But as I've been exposed to more and more feminist ideals, I feel like that the topic of feminism, or the meaning of feminism, has changed over time. Mm-hmm. I just don't feel like it's that narrow view. It's actually a whole lot broader. You know, it involves a competition of genders. It involves it involves elevating one gender to the detriment of the other, versus seeing that both genders are needed, both have value. And so I feel like that's the danger of where feminism has turned, and why people like myself, and I'm sure others, have then steered away to say, you know, I don't know that I'm a feminist. Yes, I absolutely believe in equal rights for women, and I don't believe in strict gender rules like maybe we saw in the 1950s, where women only stayed at home and things like that. Obviously, I'm a working mom, and that's something that I believe women should have the right to choose if they want to stay home or work and all of that stuff. But I think when you get into feminism from the perspective of man bashing and toxic masculinity and the feminization of boys, that's where I'm like, no, I can't get on board with that. I can't get on that train and keep going, because it just, you know, I see the destruction of it. I see there's been a lot, even recently when I was talking about J.K. Rowling, she was also bashed because she brought up the fact that biological women should be able to compete in their own sport and not have trans men come in and compete. And she was just completely bashed and raked over the coals for having that opinion and that stance. And so, you know, we even saw it, Candace Owens talked a lot about it when Harry Styles came on the cover of Vogue and he wore the dress and he was saying he likes to play with clothes and this and that, and she said bring back manly men, and that caused a fire of controversy in celebrity world and in the media. And one thing she said that I thought was very key was, we celebrate Harry Styles and what he did, but do you ever see the cover of Vogue like a manly man like wearing a gun or have an axe in his hand, he's going to go do manly things? You know, you don't see the media celebrate that, but yet you see them just over the top celebrate this reflection of what they think manhood should look like. And so that's where I just come down on, you don't have to create a new definition for one gender in order for the other gender to thrive. Like, we could be two separate genders we can operate in separate ways, in different ways, and it's okay. Like, we don't have to make one conform to the other. Just like when you're having conversations, I don't have to convince you to think like me, talk like me. Like, I can appreciate you for all that you bring to the table. I can appreciate you for all that you bring to the table. I don't have to force you into some preconceived role that I have. And I feel like that's where you see feminism and toxic masculinity going into danger zones. And so I'm kind of curious on your thoughts on what you think about that.
And I agree. So what you kind of talked about before was you identified as a feminist, and then kind of as time went on and you saw this kind of shifting in the feminist movement, that's completely accurate, because there was a point in time where feminism was necessary for the liberation of women. But
like to vote,
Right. So you get there and you achieve that, but that's not enough. And so they have to take it so many steps beyond that. And I think, had we just said, okay, yay, feminism, we are liberated, we are free, what rights do we not have today as women? What rights do we not have that men have? None. Right? And so then we can say, okay, we don't really need feminism anymore because we've achieved what we needed to achieve with it. The feminist movement over time has kind of taken this position where women need to become like men in a certain way, all the while demonizing men. So as far as, you know, it's more natural for a man to elevate his career over other things than it generally is for a woman. I mean, there's obviously exceptions to that. And it's also more common for men to seek like meaningless sex and not be tied down with relationships and stuff. And so we see that a lot, kind of how vulgar women have become over time in that aspect. They're trying to become like men and compete with men, while also saying men are pigs, men are this and that. They're demonizing. And so what it reminds me a lot of is you kind of take it back to like middle school. there, maybe there's this popular girl, especially girls, I feel like we could relate to this. There's somebody that does something that we're jealous of or that we would like to achieve. And the more we try to achieve that and are not able to, the angrier we get at that person. Like, they're in the wrong because they're able to do this and we're not. Well, the difference is men and women are not the same. We're wired differently mentally. We're physically built different. Women are naturally more nurturing than men. And I just kind of talked to you guys about my husband and his struggles with caring for really young kids. And it came natural to me and not for him. That doesn't mean he doesn't work on it or that I don't work on things. But we were not put here to compete with one another. We were made to coexist, and what I can bring to the table, he cannot. And so I do that to strengthen our relationship together. And what he brings to the table, some of it I cannot. And so he does that to strengthen. And so we were made to operate together. It's not one over the other, and we're not competing with each other. We were made with differences for a reason, to strengthen each other. And so the feminist movement has just moved so far beyond just liberating women, and it's turned into, we're going to demonize men now that they just can't be happy with what we've got. And I can't see a reason that we would need to keep feminism today in America. I just really can't. I don't know what we don't have. In America today, as women, we're the most liberated of any women of any point in history, anywhere in the world, basically. So I just don't see the push to keep moving beyond that. We're free.
I think the core thing too, I think of even the conversation we just had before, I feel like it's the same principles of, even when we were talking about race, like the same pitfalls exist in this topic. And it's, are you personally liberated? Because you're going to keep trying to fight this thing, and then you end up so far over here because you then are now trying to take away the rights of other people because you're chasing after this liberation that needs to come from the inside. Now, are there still, I think there's like attitudes and there's certain things like in culture that are worth facing, and there might be like job pay things in certain areas. And even in the church, I think that there's room to grow in the sense of women. Because it's another thing of taking, scripture. Okay, are you just going to camp out on that scripture where Paul was talking about in a certain culture where he's talking to the Corinthians when they worshipped women and there was an imbalance of women, and he was speaking, don't let the women teach, and you could camp on that. But what about the scripture also that says, when Jesus says, if we're focusing on the Spirit, he's like, there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. And I think it's important to notice on that because Jesus abolished every line and every hierarchy that there could be. There's an order, and he talks about man and woman. I think that has to do with marriage. But if you're not in marriage, that's a different thing. And that's a whole other subject if you want to go in to be in, how can you be subject to your husband? Well, the guys actually have a lot harder call because it says love your wife like Christ loved the church. And you know what? Christ died for the church. So let's not take everything out of imbalance here. And it goes back to that thing. If you're truly free, then I would recommend for the women to stay true to your convictions. And if you're free, you're going to breed liberation. If you're free, you're going to stand, you're going to want to make a difference. So go out where you feel, how are we going to fight your battles? And I think how you fight your battles, we can tell then if you're truly free or not. So stand up and like Martin, stand up in the good way to fight it. And I think it's all about the method of how you're fighting it, because you're just going to breed more destruction and try to take it away from somebody else. Then if you're truly free, you're going to stand, you're going to be persistent, you're going to have perseverance to stand in the battle maybe where there is an injustice. And so I think there's a different perspective and different experiences. So somebody, like we might say, like I agree, like women have come a long way. But there may be in certain areas where people are experiencing it. But I would say, please just really be free on the inside and don't try to take freedom from others. Because we need men, like everybody has value, we all have a place. That's just kind of my thought.
It just doesn't work to demonize one gender in order to elevate another. It doesn't work that way. And I just, real quick, I wanted to share just this. Is we talked about being in the mind, and I have a naturally paranoid type of personality where I always feel like somebody doesn't like me or somebody, and I have to recognize that in myself and not push that on other people. And just one example I wanted to give just briefly was, a previous job I had, I worked with all women. We were all sitting in the office together. We had our meeting. And then there was a specific point in time where every single one of them, their phones went off. And they all looked down at their phones and they're all smiling and laughing. And my phone didn't go off. And I'm just like turning beet red because I just know that they're sending a message about me, that they're making fun of me or something. And so I got up where it was kind of towards the end of the meeting. I didn't say goodbye, but I didn't like rush off in complete anger, but I just got up and I walked out. And I said, I can't be in there. I can't be in there when I know they're all making fun of me. And then another coworker of mine, she's like, oh yeah, I got an email. It was just a work email about this. And I didn't have work emails sent to my phone. And she's like telling me, yeah, it came at this time. And I'm like, okay, well, that is the exact time that I thought everyone was making fun of me. And so I think that sometimes we put these things, we just have to recognize the conditioning of our brains and our setbacks and our pitfalls. And we have to call them out and move beyond them. Because was it fair for me to think that everybody was making fun of me? I didn't even speak up and say, what are you guys looking at your phones for? What's so funny? And so I think that that's just something necessary, especially when we talk about feminism. We need to see where we've been liberated and where our own mind is holding us back.
I love that. I love the humility in that too, or just in the honesty. Like that's being authentic. Like sharing that. Like, if you're so fixed on the idea, it could just be like, well, I know there was something. And just being open to hear that it was a process, and you can admit we all are wrong at times, and to know that we all have places where we've been broken, and that's so important because it does kind of cloud your vision on things. So, which kind of makes us understand why. Maybe people, it kind of gives us compassion for people that have out of their pain, these goggles and are just, categorizing, but we need to go back and approach each other as humans and have compassion for one another.
Yeah. And it reminds me of when we were talking about how feminism came in to correct the imbalance that there was with women's rights. I see right now that there's an imbalance in liberal female voices that are elevated and celebrated versus conservative voices. So feminism, in some ways, only celebrates certain voices, and that's not right, and that's not fair. There needs to be this balance. I feel like that's where there's room for correction. Is saying that someone who has a female conservative voice should be celebrated and acknowledged just as much as a liberal voice, or at least the space to speak should be the same. Versus where we see now, which is a great imbalance.
That's a great point too, because I think it goes back to us as people. Like, let's evaluate. Are we just wanting certain people to change and be like, I want them to have more people like that? But to realize, like, okay, there's a need. Like, let's be innovative. Let's be creative. How can we be part of this solution? Take ownership. Like, enough of there's enough pointing of the fingers on both sides. Like, let's be empowered. That's why I love, you jumped on this. You took the skills God has given you, and you've been grinding on it. Like, I know there's a purpose, and I don't know. We each carry dreams in our hearts, and it's a process of even what I think everybody wants to feel fulfilled in what they're doing, and everybody longs to feel like they're connecting to purpose. And I even think about your journey of starting this, that it was a process, and it's not easy. But what I love about it is if we keep our hearts, and I think it's even the times and seasons we're in, I think it kind of puts that fire to our purpose. Even now, it's and I think what can hedge us into, it's not fun to be under pressure, right? But if we're developing character and we're growing in purpose in who we are, there is, and we clearly see that there's this pressure in this world, but what's beautiful is we're going to see diamonds come out, we're going to see gems. And I just, for the listeners, for each one of us, that we keep pressing into the pressure, we keep, birthing solutions, starting conversations, but I think it's all about the approach and this we're not smug with our being well, this person needs to do that. We see flaws, okay, but now let's rise up and let's be part of the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. There is this meme I love. I know we're continuing to talk about this, but it just really speaks to me where it says real women fix each other's crowns without telling the world that they're crooked. And it just reminded me of when, you know, I've worked in different office settings, and there's been a stark contrast in different jobs that I've had where I've been in certain jobs where there was a lot of backbiting and backstabbing among females, and then jobs where, you know, there was a lot of encouragement and support. And so I think at a time right now, like you said, pointing fingers and saying, you know, you're wrong for what you think and you're wrong for what you think. Let's come together and create community, a sisterhood, because that's what true sisterhood looks like. It's not the backbiting and the pointing fingers and the gossip and all of that. It's having dialogue with each other, respecting each other's viewpoints, and giving each other space to share and the safety to share.